In the heart of an ancient forest shrouded in mystery stood a lone house. This wasn't just any house, but a structure that seemed to defy the passage of time itself. It was nestled deep within the woods, far from the hustle and bustle of the urban world, a relic of a bygone era. The house had an aura of eerie stillness, as if it were a silent observer to the secrets of the age-old forest. Its windows, like the hollow eyes of a timeless specter, peered out into the wilderness, reflecting the moonlight that filtered through the dense canopy above. The creaky wooden porch, the moss-covered roof, the weathered walls, all whispered tales of solitude and silence. The forest around was a symphony of sounds, but this house, it stood in stark silence, a silence that screamed louder than the forest's chorus. This house, away from the world, was home to a solitary girl. The girl, as enigmatic as the house she lived in, had never been seen by anyone outside. This solitary figure, our protagonist, was a mystery wrapped in the veil of seclusion. She was like an unread book, its pages untouched by the eyes of the world. Yet, inside the book, a world of its own existed. In the depths of her solitude, a symphony of silence played. The world outside was oblivious to her existence. The wind whispered stories to her that no one else could hear. The house, her only companion, echoed with her laughter and tears. The solitude was her sanctuary, her refuge from the world. Her life was a paradox, a blend of isolation and companionship. She was a solitary girl, but her life was a pandemonium of emotions, thoughts, and imaginings. She was a universe unto herself, unseen and unknown to the world outside. But she was not alone. Invisible companions, whispers in the shadows, kept her company. This was not a typical living arrangement, but the girl had learnt to adapt. She was alone, yes, but not quite. There were others in the house, unseen entities that made their presence known in the most chilling ways. Let's delve into the uncanny occurrences that began to unfold in her solitary dwelling. The house was never quiet. Even in the dead of night there was an incessant hum of whispers, soft and incoherent, like a secret conversation she was not invited to join. It was not a figment of her imagination. The whispers were real, emerging from the corners of the room, from the spaces between her books, from the hollow beneath her bed. The whispers were not the only indication of her spectral roommates. Objects moved on their own accord, taking up new positions when she was not looking. A cup would slide across the table, a chair would creak as if someone had just stood up, and the pages of her book would turn, as if an unseen hand was reading along with her. It was as if the space around her was alive, pulsating with an unseen energy. The girl had never seen these entities, only heard and felt their presence. They were like shadows, formless and elusive, slipping away whenever she tried to confront them. They were not malicious or threatening, just unsettling in their quiet, unseen existence. What was most eerie about these occurrences was their unpredictable nature. There was no rhyme or reason, no pattern that she could discern. The whispers would sometimes fall silent for days, only to return louder and more persistent. The objects would remain stationary for weeks, and then suddenly start their inexplicable dance. The girl, however, did not fear these unseen companions. She accepted them as part of her reality, a peculiar part of her solitary existence. She had come to understand that they were not there to harm her, but simply cohabit with her in the house. This was their home too, after all. She had made peace with their presence, living her life amidst these spectral oddities. The girl accepted them as part of her reality until one day the whispers grew louder, the shadows darker. The house, once filled with an eerie but manageable quiet, was now pulsating with a disquieting energy. The whispers that the girl had come to live with, almost treating them as her silent roommates, were no longer just hushed voices. They were louder, more insistent, like a gust of wind rattling the window panes on a stormy night. The shadows, her constant companions in the corners of her vision, seemed to have grown darker, denser. They were no longer content to just lurk in the periphery. They had taken on a life of their own, dancing and flickering even in the bright light of day. The walls of the house seemed to close in, the ceiling seemed to lower, as if the shadows were trying to squeeze the life out of the space. The girl felt a chill run down her spine, a sense of unease creeping over her that she couldn't shake off. It was as if the house was transforming, shifting from a quiet recluse in the woods to a malevolent entity. The whispers and the shadows were no longer just figments of her imagination, or the result of living alone. They were real, and they were closing in on her. She would hear her name being called out in the dead of night, the whispers turning into a cacophony of voices, each demanding her attention. The shadows seemed to reach out to her, their dark tendrils stretching towards her in the dim light. The sense of being watched, of being observed, was more palpable than ever. The house had turned from her sanctuary into a prison, the walls echoing with the whispers of her unseen companions. That night, as the moon shone brightly outside, casting long, eerie shadows inside the house, the girl made up her mind. She couldn't live in fear, couldn't let the unseen dominate her life. She decided to take matters into her own hands, to confront the whispers and the shadows, to confront her unseen companions. That night, as the moon shone brightly outside, the girl decided to confront her unseen companions. Armed with courage, she stood in the darkness, demanding answers. Her voice echoed through the house, a beacon of defiance in the face of the unknown. She was no longer a timid, solitary girl, but a force to be reckoned with. In her solitude, she had learned to fight, to confront the unseen. She had been pushed to her limits, and now she was pushing back. Her voice rose, a crescendo of determination and fearlessness, shattering the silence of the house. The words were simple, yet powerful. "Who are you? Why are you here?" The house seemed to respond, its very bones trembling with an unseen force. The whispers grew louder, the shadows danced more wildly. It was as if the house itself was caught in the throes of confrontation, mirroring the girl's turmoil. She was standing her ground, staring into the abyss, demanding answers from the unseen. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she did not falter. She was resolute, a lone warrior in the face of an invisible enemy. The whispers turned into murmurs, then into a cacophony of voices. It was as if the house was trying to communicate, to reveal its secrets. The girl listened, her heart pounding, her breath hitching. The voices grew louder, the shadows more restless. The house seemed to be alive, pulsating with an unseen energy. Yet amidst the chaos, the girl remained steadfast. She refused to back down, refused to yield. She was there for answers, and she wouldn't leave without them. Her voice rose again, cutting through the noise, a beacon of defiance in the face of the unknown. The house seemed to respond, the whispers growing quieter, the shadows retreating. It was as if the house was acknowledging her bravery, her determination. Slowly the whispers faded. The shadows dissolved. The girl stood in the silence, her heart pounding, her breath ragged. And then, silence. The confrontation was over. The girl stood alone in the quiet house, her courage a beacon in the darkness. The unseen had been confronted, the unknown faced. She had demanded answers, and in the silence, she found them. A silence so deafening it made the whispers seem like a lullaby. From the frantic cacophony of moments ago, the house was suddenly shrouded in a silence that was almost surreal. The sheer absence of sound was so profound that it seemed to hum in the girl's ears, a stark contrast to the whispers that had filled the house just moments before. It was a silence that bore down on her, heavy and oppressive, hanging in the air like a thick fog. The girl stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. The silence wrapped around her like a shroud, a blanket of nothingness that smothered the world around her. She could hear her own breath, ragged and uneven, the only sound that dared to break the stillness. Her mind, however, was far from quiet. Fear and confusion swirled within her, a hurricane of emotions that threatened to consume her. The whispers had been terrifying, yes, but they were something, a sign of a presence. This silence, on the other hand, was an abyss, a void that swallowed everything. It was an unknown, a question mark that held countless possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. She found herself straining her ears, desperate for any sound, any indication of what was to come. The silence seemed to stretch on endlessly, a vast expanse of nothingness that offered no clues, no answers. She felt lost, adrift in a sea of silence, waiting for something to happen. But as the seconds turned into minutes, the silence remained unbroken. The girl was left alone with her fear, her mind spinning with the countless possibilities. What could be lurking in the silence? What was waiting for her in the darkness? Each thought, each possibility was a shadow that danced at the edges of her mind, a phantom that whispered of the unknown. And then, from the silence, came a voice. A voice as clear as day echoed through the house. Suddenly the silence was shattered, like glass under a sledgehammer. The voice was not like the ghostly whispers that had been her unseen companions. This was strong, resonant, a voice that carried the weight of authority and commanded attention. It was as if an invisible force had breathed life into the still air, filling the house with its presence. The voice was loud, almost deafening, yet there was a clarity to it that was chilling. It was a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It was a voice that transcended the physical, a voice that was more than just sound waves vibrating through the air. It was a voice that seemed to speak directly to the soul. Then, the voice spoke. Its words hung in the air, heavy with meaning and laden with intent. The echo lingered for a moment, then faded away, leaving behind a silence even more profound than before. "I'm here." And then the screen went black.